I was lying awake late Sunday night, scanning the headlines, when I saw that Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle had been stabbed to death in their home on Sunday afternoon. My immediate thought was, I wonder if they have an addict son. We had an addict son. And sometimes during the depths of his addiction, he was psychotic and violent, and we feared for our lives. Sometimes he was sweet and funny. Sometimes he was sad and remorseful. But sometimes he was truly a terrifying force in our home, and we feared for our lives. So I looked around on the internet and discovered that indeed Rob and Michelle had a son who was an addict, 32-year-old Nick. When a terrible thing like this happens, I think it's natural for us to want to find someone to blame. We, of course, all feel threatened when we hear about something terrible happening like this, and we'd like to have a story about why we're safe. If we have someone to blame, then that gives us some feeling that that person, that entity isn't in our home or in our lives, and maybe we're going to be okay. Unfortunately, addiction is a disease that, as far as we can tell, has afflicted humanity since the beginning of recorded history. There are stories of lives ruined by addiction to alcohol or other things that go back to the earliest days that we know of. And it's sort of astonishing how poorly we deal with it, how little we've been able to develop to combat the disease. Who knows how many lives it's ruined over time. When our son died, his addiction began with opiates. And it began during a time when the people who were manufacturing the opioids were manufacturing orders of magnitude more of them than were needed for clinical purposes. And so the illegal market was flooded with opioids, and there were clinics that claimed to be pain clinics on many street corners, basically serving addicts. And I could blame that industry for his addiction. And it definitely played a role in the beginning of his addiction. But I'm not convinced that that's an ultimate cause. And I really don't feel that there's anyone to blame. Maybe it was his parenting. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was just the psychology he was given when he was born. Maybe it was some other event or experience in his life. The fact is, we cannot know, but we can know that Nick Reiner has a disease that is almost impossible to treat effectively, and that his parents have been for decades doing their best to take care of him, to give him the opportunity of recovery. They took him to a Hollywood holiday party with a bunch of celebrities the day before this happened. They continued to support and to love him. And what happened to them is a terrible tragedy for them, for his siblings, for everybody who loved any of those people, for Nick, and in some sense for the rest of us. However, it's not a tragedy that is going to be avoided by any act of revenge or law enforcement or moral outrage. It is just going to be one of those tragedies that makes us feel terribly sad. And maybe in that sadness, we can feel the deepest possible compassion for the people who've been directly hurt by this and the people who are going to be hurt in the future. Maybe we can feel that compassion, and maybe we can let it inspire us to try to do something to help. I think perhaps that intention is the best thing we have right now for being helpful.